My name's Jason Walsh, as the slide says. Graduated from here in 1991, which, as Mr. Sobleski will always remind you, is the regular it's the best class ever. It's recognized. It's officially documented as the best class ever at Carroll. There's a few of our classmates that are running around in here too, which is kind of cool. So a little bit about me, and I'm going to try to stick to the format here that they have as closely as we can. Come on in.
What's your name?
And get through this stuff in like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then really just have more time to talk with you guys. So I currently work at a cybersecurity company called Crowdstrike. I've got one of our adversary things on here. I'll explain that stuff here in a little bit. But if you don't know what Crowdstrike is, let me see if this will play. It may not. It's not going to play. All right. Well, we'll try it. I'll try to play the commercial for you at the end. But we're a cybersecurity company. We do a lot of different things. If you're a Formula One racing fan, we sponsor the Mercedes AMG team. You can see our little logo on the side of the car. It's really cool. What I do there is I am the director of what's called the Intel Customer Operations Team. I've spent most of my career in intelligence and in cybersecurity. So I run a team of about 34-ish people that is all over the globe that are working directly with companies to help them with their needs around cyber threat intelligence, right? So they're trying to figure out who's trying to attack them, what they're using to attack them, how to stop them, things like that. Before CrowdStrike, I was in the Intel community, so I worked out on the base. If anybody else's parents work on the base here? Yeah, a couple? Okay. Yeah, I worked at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center on the base for close to 10 years, and went from sitting at a desk, had specific accounts that I worked on analyst, and when I left, I was what was called the cyber mission manager. So it was a cool title with not a lot of authority, but I oversaw the cyber mission for all of NASIC, and just the quick parts that you can still talk about is basically the mission there was to identify foreign threats to U.S. Air Force and other systems. So the systems that the Air Force runs and operates, so foreign countries' abilities to attack those. And the other part, which I always thought was kind of cooler, was that we got to try to identify cyber vulnerabilities in foreign equipment. So aircraft, missiles, stuff like that. You have a lot of reverse engineering, taking things apart and figuring out how to break it. That was always the cooler part. That was not my forte when I worked there. It was cool to manage it because there were guys a lot smarter than me who could figure that stuff out. But it was cool to see. Prior to that, I was a network administrator and a customer support person. I'm going to go through my entire career timeline here in just a minute. You'll see it's very wide and pretty varied. Anybody going into the computer field at all, I firmly believe they need to spend like at least 6 months doing customer support because it's painful. But you learn a lot, right? When somebody's on the other end of a phone or whatever and their thing is broken and their thing doesn't work and you're trying to figure out how to fix it and you can't touch it, you have to think a lot. So I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Anyway, just the artwork that's up here is just some of the stuff that we do at CrowdStrike. You can't read it really well, but down here at the bottom, there's a thing that we talk about all the time, that the heart of every attack is a human being. And my job is to get beyond the kind of ones and zeros, malware, ransomware, things like that, to figure out who the people are, right? And every one of these attacks, I don't care who it is, there is somebody at the other end of the keyboard that's launching it, that's doing it. And they have a motivation. Their motivation may be that they're in a foreign military and their commander has said, this is your objective, go. Their motivation may be that they're a criminal and they're deploying ransomware and the motivation is money. Their motivation might be that the organization that you're with represents a cause that they disagree with. So they are an activist, we call them hacktivists, that are trying to attack you to stop you from doing what you're doing. But in every one of those instances, there's a person there. And if there's a person there, there's a motivation. If there's a motivation, you can impose a cost and make that cost too big that they don't want to do it. And so that's what we try to do. Our job is to figure out who the people are and how they're doing what they're doing. And we do it, we try to have some fun with actors, and we classify all of the actors that we track with different animal names. This isn't easy to see, but we might be able to get you guys the copies of the slides. But we basically take each country that we track and we assign them an animal. So Russia is a bear, China is a panda, Iran is a kitten, and I can explain why in a minute. North Korea is something called a cholima, which is not a real animal. It's actually a mythical flying horse, and it's the state animal for North Korea, which fits. But we do all that so that it's a little bit easier to track who they are, right? So some of you may have heard of Fancy Bear. Fancy Bear became very famous during the 2016 U.S. presidential election cycle. That was the group who had targeted the Democrat National Committee, stolen a bunch of emails, leaked a bunch of stuff. That was them. The names are hilarious where they come from, but I can explain that more as we go if we have time. But like the kitten one for Iran, Persian cat is where it comes from, Persia, Iran. And when we started to track them, they were fairly immature. So an immature cat is a kitten. So they're actually pretty mature now. But anyway, all right. We on time. Okay, so now it's going to play, of course. Anyway, that's our motto. We stop breaches, and that's what the company tries to do. Okay, timeline, and boy, that's kind of ugly for you guys to try to see. All right, let me just kind of walk you guys through it. So, because where I got to where I am I think is pretty unique, and it's pretty varied. Anyway, there's a large career here. If you've ever seen or college part here, if you've ever seen the movie Tommy Boy, where they're like, yeah, everybody goes to college for 8 years, and they're called doctors. Yeah, that's pretty much me. Anyway, graduated from Carroll in '91. First stop in college was Ashland University. I was a biology major, and was at Ashland for a year. Came back home after a year to Wright State, and you can see the big gap from Ashland to Wright State. Still a biology major for most of that time. I had so many credits, but hadn't actually finished the degree. There was a long story as to why. I was in sports medicine. I was an athletic trainer, like Michelle or Dave, who worked downstairs. That's the kind of the career path that I was going down. That's what I was going to do. Wright State didn't have a specific program for that. You had to be a teacher, and I didn't really want to teach. But I wanted to be a trainer, but I was at Wright State. So it's just kind of like, I just kind of bumped around for a while trying to figure out a way to graduate. Ended up actually not graduating from Wright State. I was far enough along as an athletic trainer. I was actually working down the street at Beaver Creek as an assistant trainer there, and working fairly regular hours while I was finishing what Wright State had very recently created, which is called an exercise science degree. Still biology, a lot of physics, a lot of kinesiology and stuff like that was built into it. And like I said, working down the street at Beaver Creek, and kind of had an epiphany, if you will, where I was late at night waiting on a practice to finish up, and was like, I love doing this work, but these hours are killing me. And kind of had to figure pretty quickly something else that I needed to do, like with my life. I was, gosh, how old was I? 25 at that point, I think, maybe 24. And where the path I thought I was going to go down just was not going to get me where I wanted to be. You could just kind of tell, right? It's kind of a panic moment. You go through and you figure it out. But I had always dabbled in computers. I had, since I was my mother, some of you know her, you probably don't know that though. She substitute teaches here all the time. She taught at Immaculate Conception and was one of the first people really in the area to bring computers into a classroom. So she brought in Apple IIs, and you really rewind your way back to figure out what an Apple II was. No color monitor. Anyway, I learned how to program on those, and I had always dabbled in them, right? And pretty soon, just like a lot of kids, you start playing games. And I got a Commodore 64, again, go way back, and Google one of those and see what those things are. Commodore 64 games came on 5 1/4 floppy disks, big floppy disks, if you've ever seen those. And when games first started to go around, people who played games, kind of sort of like you do now, you could just copy the disk. If you had 2 disk drives, you were a god because you could copy from one drive to the next. And so you could copy disks and you could share your games with other people, right? You didn't have to buy them. Game manufacturers figured this out pretty quick, and they started putting codes on the games. You guys know this all now. If you play Xbox or PS5 or PS4 now, there's always a code to unlock the game. That's actually where this started. But when they first started doing this, they would embed them in the game. And it didn't take us long to figure out that, hey, if it's on the disk, I can probably find it. And so that's how I started, if you want to call it hacking, that's how I started figuring these things out. And hacking was really just, the information's there, I'm just trying to find another way to get at it, right? So we started to find these game codes, and then you had the game code, you'd write it on the disk, you'd hand it off to your friends, and that's how I started doing this. I had always dabbled in it. So when I had reached that point in my career with athletic training, I'm like, this ain't going to be it. I kind of fell back onto computers, and there was a program at Wilberforce University, a little bit farther down the road into Xenia, that allowed you to finish a degree if you had gone a long way like I had and finished a degree in computer science. And so that's what I did. And right after that, started working at, finally graduate, I have on there. Started working at Reynolds & Reynolds, which was downtown. That was a customer service job. It was a cut in your teeth job. It was one of those, like, you need to progress in your career because you don't want to do this for the rest of your life. It kind of sucked. It was shift work. I worked like second shift, but gave me a lot of good experience. I started my own business after that, doing a little bit of like consulting work, helping small businesses set up their networks and computers. There wasn't a lot of that out here at the time. And at the same time, started working through that business, got hired at Precious Blood, which is now Mother Brunner, up in Trotwood, and I ran their computer systems and the computer systems for St. Rita's, which combined to form Mother Brunner. And then the big change in my life and my career was 9/11. 9/11 happened. I knew I had, to quote Liam Neeson, a particularly unique set of skills that could probably help in this fight. So I was 30, 31, 32, and thought about joining like the reserves. You could still join the reserves up to the point where you're 35, but also started applying for jobs out at the base. Found the job at NASIC, got in at NASIC, became an analyst, analyzing what I had been doing for a while from the other side of the fence, and things kind of took off from there. Was at NASIC for a while, like I said, kind of progressed my way up through there. And then when the opportunity came to join Crowdstrike, which at the time was a startup company, there were only like 300 people in the company when I joined. I wouldn't say I jumped at it because I thought about it for a long time because I was working at a very stable, fairly lucrative government job, and went ahead and made the jump over to the private sector from there. I'm very happy that I did. I've been very blessed with the way the company has grown and the opportunities that it's given me, and and it continues to grow, and we're able to do some pretty unique things. And whereas before, when I was looking at things just from a U.S. government perspective, I work now with governments all over the world, companies, huge corporations all over the world. That like I said, the people on my team literally, I have people who work for me that are in Israel, that are in Dubai, that are in the Middle East, Japan, Australia. So I literally see now what this world looks like, what the cyber landscape looks like from a lot of different perspectives. So That's pretty close, not bad, to me getting through this. I've got one other slide, I'll save it for the end. But so yeah, that's kind of how I got from literally sitting where you guys are now to where I am now. A couple of things, and I'll shut up and let you guys ask questions. But if you guys noticed in there, like especially in this started college, finished college, like that's a huge gap. Right, I have one son now who's trying to figure out still what he's going to be majoring in college. He's in college now. My daughter's here as a senior. She's going to be going through this too. And one thing I will tell everybody is two things. I'll tell everybody. Number one, it's okay not to know when you get started. And maybe equally as important, it's okay to switch. If you think you knew what you wanted to do and you get into it, and you realize maybe it wasn't everything you thought it was, it's okay to switch. It's scary, but it's okay. But keep going, right? I never stopped going to school. Like I may have dropped down to 1 or 2 classes a semester, but I never stopped. And to me, that was the key. I always had this fear, like if I stop, I may not start again. And don't stop. Just keep progressing, try to keep moving forward, and eventually you'll find your niche. And whatever career that ends up being in, it may not, if it isn't what you started or what you thought you were going to be doing sitting here, that's fine. That's fine. Nobody cares once you get in and start working. So that's it. Let me just ask you guys, and then show of hands, who has an idea right now what you want to major in, either next year or year after? Okay. And you're sitting in here, so I'm assuming cybersecurity is something that you're interested in, okay? The folks that are senior or junior? Junior, okay, and another junior back there. So that's great. If you didn't raise your hand, that's totally fine too. Get into school, start taking the basic classes that you have to take things that look interesting. You might find something, right? Like I said, my oldest son right now is a COVID junior, they call them. So he's academically a junior, but he lost a year. Just literally changing his major today or tomorrow for the 3rd time. It's okay. It's really not a big deal. So, all right, questions? Fire them off. Anybody? Go ahead.
So you said that you switched from government to private. Like,
Yeah.
During that moment, like what I guess spurred you to make that switch? Because you weren't sure what was going to happen. And when you said that Crowdstrike was kind of like
It was small. Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of a product of a government career. If you're a civil servant, I wasn't a contractor. I was they call them GS employees, right? I worked for the government, for the Air Force. That structure of your career is pretty structured, frankly, right? You start with it's very military-like. Like you start out, you're like a GS-7, and then maybe you become a 9 and a 12 or whatever. As you go up in civilian rank, if you will. It really holds no authority other than in your own mind. But that's also your pay that goes up, right? And there's different qualifications and things that you're supposed to have with that. Extremely stable. And you can plan, right? You can say, okay, I know I'm a GS-12, I want to become a GS 14 or 15, I know exactly how much money I'm going to be making. But what you find as you kind of get towards the top of that pyramid is that if you want to keep progressing, the what they call GS-15s, which are kind of the top of that pyramid before you move into another pyramid of senior executives, those positions are limited, right? Just like in the military, right? There's only so many colonels. You have a lot more privates or airmen than you do colonels. So those positions become limited. And at NASIC, where I was, the career path that I was in, there were a lot of those folks. And there, men and women that were the GS-15s or above. And I would have been waiting for a long time, right, for an opportunity to continue to advance. And I was 42, 3, I guess, something like that. And I wasn't, I still had a lot more ambition, and I wasn't really ready to coast, to just kind of shift into neutral and let my career coast. I wanted to do new things, more things. And when this opportunity came up, it was, private sector, there aren't those those kind of artificial, they're not barriers, but limitations, right? Your career can be whatever you want it to be, and it's just based on you and your performance and what you can do, and the opportunities at the organization, obviously. But if the organization's growing, those opportunities can grow with it. And so that's what finally pushed me over the edge to make that move. Not easy. There's that the government career is great for its stability and your ability to provide for your family and the retirement. And I mean, it's a risk. It was definitely a risk. It was one that I felt that was pretty well calculated, and it's worked out so far. But I had a lot of friends, and I still have a lot of friends who work over on the base. And when I was leaving, I remember one lady who's still there was she was a good mentor for me when I was there. Stopped me and she said, "You realize this is a government job? Like you don't really want to leave these?" And I was like, "No, I really do. It's okay." And from her perspective, where she was, totally respect where she was coming from. But for me, I wasn't. I had more ambition. I wanted to keep moving. So that's a great question, though. That's something that all of you, well, if you continue on this career path, you may be faced with that. Fire them off. Yeah, go ahead.
You said Reynolds and Reynolds was pretty cut teeth for
Yeah, it was.
Customer service. Are there any other customer service places that you would recommend instead of?
Not necessarily a place, right? So Reynolds and Reynolds, if I'd have stayed there, I could have progressed up if I wanted to, or what have you. I was in their support organization, so their customer support organization. I would not have wanted to stay there very long. From a cybersecurity perspective, the entry-level jobs are typically in what's called a SOC. That's the network operation centers, and those are the people. And like we work with them every day. Typically not the line people doing the actual work, but their managers or their supervisors. Those are the entry-level jobs in cybersecurity. These are the people that are seeing incidents come up, like hey, somebody downloaded a malicious file. Right, the system that they use quarantined it. You need to go investigate it. You may get 15 of those a day. Right, I'm being kind. They could get 50, but every one of those entry-level jobs, you'll have a checklist of things you're supposed to do. Did the malicious file allow the actor to get farther than the container that it was in? Was it a false positive? Was it really bad? Was it something that the system thought it was bad but was actually not? Was it something where the person thought they were going to Google and they mistyped it and it went they went somewhere else instead? Those are the entry-level jobs, and just about any large-ish corporation is going to have a network security operations center, and those are the ones, and that is where you'll cut your teeth. There's a problem in the industry too, because cybersecurity has grown. Right, COVID exacerbated this, because everybody all of a sudden, boom, work from home, and including the cybersecurity people. So, all of a sudden these companies now have to secure, people's individual devices, right? Not the company provided device, right? They have a lot more things to secure. So the job of those folks went up by orders of magnitude in its complexity. The problem that the industry has right now is because that has gone up, the level of hiring hasn't gone with it. And so there's a ton of burnout for people who are new into the industry. Because like I said, you may have 15, you may have 50, you may have 100 things you have to investigate. And you've got your manager back there who has to get these things through, because his manager has to answer all the way up through, the CEO of the company, are we secure? And it's a real problem. But those are the entry-level positions. That's just kind of what they are right now. In our company, we have some entry-level at that level, and in the intelligence field, entry-level for us is you have to have a degree in cyber in intelligence, and then we really want somebody who is familiar with cyber threat intelligence. And we have our entry-level folks are typically answering what we call RFIs, so requests for information from customers. So customer asks us a question, and they're writing a report to answer that question. Could be a page, could be 10 pages, whatever is needed. But that's kind of the crank turning type of job that an entry level in my organization is. So
Where everybody would be experiencing that at some point.
everybody would be experiencing that at some point. And I, we tried to progress people out of that after about a year or two because burnout becomes a real thing. A real thing. Other questions? Good.
I saw on the PowerPoint you have, it says starting second business.
Oh yeah, thank you. My wife and I recently started a second business, and we're going to go 180 degrees in the other direction, where we started doing some investing in real estate, where we own like a couple like rental houses. So I put it on there because that will probably outlast cybersecurity at some point. Like I'll be done, and I'm not sure when, but I'll be done, and that was on there as another means of passive income for us. But I put it on there because it's real. Like we started it, and frankly, she does more work with it than I do. She works at Wright State, but she does a little bit more with the property managers and stuff like that. But yeah, the second business we started, like I said, 180 degrees in the other direction. It has nothing to do with cybersecurity, but it's real estate.
So that also, and you mentioned this before, that you started like a first business?
Yep. That one I started because I wasn't really, I was at Reynolds & Reynolds, didn't really like, too harsh. It was, the customer service, I liked it, it was okay, but it was like, I'm not going to do this forever, right? And there was a lot of opportunity out there with companies that were starting up at that time. It was a 2003-ish timeframe, so I had friends who had started businesses, and all of them were moving and starting to computerize what they were doing. So they were getting offices and they needed Wi-Fi set up. Well, I mean, I was enough of a geek that I knew that. I did it at home, right? So I could go in and help them set those things up, or set up a server with a workstation. Maybe they needed two. That was that business that I started doing. Through that business, I met the people who ended up working with at Precious Blood. That's why those things are kind of smashed together. And I ended up basically just stopping the rest of the work, working at Precious Blood, doing a little bit of it on the side. I did some digital forensics work for law enforcement during that time as well. Once I moved to the federal service, I had to give all that up. It was considered a conflict of interest by the government, which I understood, and so I stopped. We just kind of shut down, and you kind of network when you have a small business, and you just can move clients to other people in the same industry, and they were fine. So, other questions? Anything that I have not hit that I should hit?
Could you touch a little bit about, so you mentioned how with the athletic training job, you didn't feel like you were the rest of your life. So I guess, in what ways do you feel that your career affects the kind of life you live? In the ideal world, you'd flip it, right? You would say, you have the life you want to live, and you find a career that fits it. But, or maybe it's symbiotic, right? For me, the athletic training part was great, and there are so many parallels. I actually go back every now and then. I haven't done it since COVID, and I will talk to the athletic training classes at Wright State. And what I talk to them about is what they're learning. What you think you're learning is sports medicine, right? How do you take care of how do you evaluate a sprained ankle? How do you evaluate, a broken finger, a concussion, whatever? What you're really learning is how to analyze data that's in front of you. And what I realized once I had switched over to computer science and somewhat there, but really when I had gotten into intelligence, is all the parallels and just the way the thought process, right? And what I was doing with athletic training was great. It was fulfilling. You were helping people. I was still young enough that I thought I was an athlete, and you were involved with football teams and soccer teams, and it was cool, right? It was fun. But I also had enough colleagues that were older that were not seeing their own kids' activities because they were working, at Carroll's Friday night football game, but their kid goes to Middletown or whatever, and they were missing things. And they were if you ever watch Michelle or Dave, like the hours are long, and the pay doesn't really reflect the hours, and it's hard. So you're having to make those sacrifices away from family, and I could kind of see it. Did I have any children? No. Was I married? No. But I could see it, and I knew where it was going to go. And that's where I kind of had that, like, this is awesome when you're in your 20s. When you get in your 30s, maybe not so much. So that's what kind of facilitated that switch over. But what I did find, like I said, was that so many of my athletic training classes where you're taught, look at the data in front of you and make an assessment. And we had to do it fast, right? Somebody's injured on a field, you have minutes to make a decision. That all switched over from the customer service stuff, but in a much larger part to intelligence, where you were giving a large set of data from a lot of different sources coming in, and we had more time to make the decisions, right? The assessments of what was going on when I was working through problems when I was an Intel analyst. But the thinking was the same, right? The problem solving was the same. You were still looking at the data. Do you trust it? Do you not trust it? Is it really saying what it's saying? If it is, how much weight do you put behind it? Okay, what do you think is happening based on everything that you have in front of you? That's basically the same process that we went through. So there were a lot of parallels.
How did Carol prepare you?
How did Carol prepare me? There were a lot of different ways. Like, if you did, you could rewind us back, what are we, 30 years now, I guess we're out now. So it's ridiculous. 30-year-old me sitting here, I wouldn't, this is not what I thought I would be doing in the least, right? I actually, sitting here, thought I was going to go into engineering. That took a year of college to figure out that, no, you weren't. No, you were not. That calculus stuff is really, really hard. That was squashed pretty much in the first semester. It was kind of pre-business is what it was. But, Carol prepared me in a lot of different ways, and a lot of them are intangibles because, like, the academic stuff that I did translated, and I could get through pretty much any college course that I was plopped down, except for calculus and organic chemistry. That was just me. That wasn't Carol. But the intangible ways that it prepared me is the connections that I still had with people. And some of my best friends are still people that I went to school with here. And the foundation from a values perspective, when you leave here and you go out and you experience other people who went to different schools and aren't taught the same things that you are, you kind of appreciate the things that you are taught here, whether it be family or faith, or even just hard work. That really comes through a lot from what Carol teaches people. I was prepared a lot through those intangibles, I think, and that was the other nice thing about Carol. And some people, maybe I'm unique, I don't know, but like Carol was always kind of a place that was always here, like a foundation. It's like an extended family almost. My family, I have many generations of my family that have come through here. My parents were in the second and third graduating classes, so it's always kind of been here, and I'm still standing here today, talking through it. So it is kind of a fallback place, and I'm happy now that I'm in a place where I can give back to it because I've taken a lot out of it, and being able to give back is very good. I'm trying to think of other more tangible things that was, but at almost 50 years old, I really don't remember the algebra classes anymore, but. I know what I can say for sure is I know that going into college, those first couple of years, the academic foundation was solid here, and I was way ahead of my peers in college. Not the engineering stuff. That was a problem. But that was me. Other questions? Anything else that I'm supposed to hit or should hit? I should have that. The cheat sheet you gave us was good. Okay. All right, then one more, because I do something else here. I am also the boys lacrosse coach here at Carroll. And if anyone's interested, boys or girls, there are the highlights from our altar game last year. That's Lucas scoring, Luke Lajeunesse. You'll see Eric Egelford here in a minute. I'm mad at any of those guys. They're not in here right now. There's Eric. This was our playoff game against Alter. But yeah, so you will see me around, especially in the spring. I'm around a ton because I'm coaching in the spring. If if this stuff comes up and you have questions, because by that point you'll have either be making or have made college choices, hit me up. I'm out there a lot. So just stop me if you if you have questions. There's Luke's game-winning goal.
Actually, I have one other question.
There you go.
So if they are interested in cybersecurity, do you
Yeah.
have a recommendation of the path they take?
Yeah, the good thing about it now is that there are plenty of programs that colleges that have computer science programs or engineering programs. Hopefully, they've got their own computer science program. That they'll have a cybersecurity major. Usually it's a Master of Science, a Bachelor of Science. I would look for that. I would look for the BS because you have a little bit more of a science and technical background, as more of a STEM background. The BA, the Bachelor of Arts, you may not get as much of the technical foundation that you would want in a pretty competitive job market right now, frankly. In 4 or 5 years when you guys are exiting it, who knows where it's going to be. But I would look for those two things. If you're interested more in the intelligence realm, like kind of the softer side, which is where I went fairly quickly, there are plenty of universities that you can have a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts in intelligence, or as a flip side to that, political science is also a really good foundation for if you're interested in the Intel community or any of this private sector Intel stuff. Political science is a good foundation if you can't find a school that has a specific intelligence program. So kind of two tracks there to think about. The computer science angle, the difference there is that you're going to be programming, you're going to be writing code. If you're interested in that, if you like it. I can tell you guys, the programming skills that I've atrophied really bad. I'm in management now. I can still write some Python, but it's not great. If you are able to pick up a coding language that you like and that you're good at, especially a scripting language that'll help you automate things, basically write a program that'll the computer can do repetitive tasks for you. Huge. Employers love it because you're immediately more efficient than your peer, right? If you can script. Like I was telling you about that SOC analyst who has 15 things to investigate. If they can write their own script to do, 5 of the steps of that investigation automatically, you're now more efficient than the person sitting next to you. So a scripting language, a coding language is big. I guess, and I'm transitioning to the Intel side, right? That's where anything that you can do to cross over, right? If you're interested in intelligence as a profession, they have to go. So Intel combined with cybersecurity, Intel combined with economics, Intel combined with law, any of those things are huge, huge. CIA, DIA, they will hire people with an economics background if they major in Intel but minor in economics because they need to gather information on that stuff. So if you can combine things from an Intel perspective, especially soft skill with technical skill, people love you. People love you. So. Other questions? You guys have to go, I assume?
That was the last lunch.
Oh, that was last lunch. So there's, okay.
We have a few more minutes, but yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys.